I was 6 years old. My mother called my grandfather, saying that we have come to school and you must say yes. Because I know this young man, he's known his secret out. He was trying to important as well. And I was seeing him up and he must say yes. Then so my teacher mother-in-law, mother-in-law, my parents and marriage, and my mother came to my bedroom to me and and all I could tell, black and white photos of them, that that the entire family can be lights of what is around table home. Because arranged marriages in Pakistan are everybody's business. The parents, the grandparents, the cousins, the uncles, the aunts, the close friends, everybody can be. And the agenda calls accept or not accept the marriage is about we far away. My parents know the family very well. He is very, very clearly has seen him. Fine. I accept America and not return to Pakistan. You want to eat it. And where I know in the middle. Also, this is my input. I suppose not learned from my long story short, long story is long. We got married and I come to the United States. Never came back to my parents. Not a phone call to this. The next morning, my husband said to you can go there the letters. He was to work. He was to gas. Make what make what. Okay, I did. I find my gold, my gold earring, my gold choker, my gold bracelet, my gold watch, my gold pocketbook, and I got all these things of makeup. I think I have never made change, and now saying, give it a little time, and I think that and that's the beginning of my subject talk. There was a lot of all in the book called called Sometimes Writing. Next talk me that point. And by this time I have been because every time I tried to say my prayers and then I went into prostration, there is a soldier who come and sit on my head to like hold me my prayer. And so that gatherings that come with that waking up that then many other people around the country and like how do we do raise them so I went to look looking for video and all I found was him from the Bible. And all the Bible statements only prophet Muhammad was written as a civilization. So I come home and I start teaching. Problem, no any Muslims on Staten Island. So what did we do? Looking for Muslim sounding names, calling them up and saying, hey, we're Muslim and we can be Staten Island, can we get together to you two, four, and very quickly we had enough to have a family, enough home to the children and that's what we funded. So what did we do? How did we bring Sunday school is a whole other story. I give it away. Have any teachers that we had to get up to speed because our children were asking us questions that I never asked my parents because I was growing up in a Muslim country. Nobody asked about it. We need the mosque because I saw that my neighbor's children on Saturday were going to the synagogue or they were going to the church. What about my children? Visiting a mosque, more on the story. Give it away again. Muslims are not allowed to speak of peace. Peace mortgages on our house. Yes, yes, you know. What did we do? Day after day, night after night, so much so that people would. Anyhow, my children grew up, went to college, and now every mom and dad only talk on parties. Every we are Pakistani, so that we can understand we have seen Christians from the old country and some people. Well, 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 kept down, and we kept changing the standards, our requirements kept evolving, and then when it came time for the marriage, I arranged my son's marriage, I arranged it. And that's how it is. I arranged marriage for my son. You uh, but now as a unit teacher, children, and that is the time that the young boys are getting married, and then the young women are now in the home. Every has a daughter. And why? Because we got the culture from the old country. We insisted on most of them. The Quran allows marriage between because the book. However, the Jews of the old country patriarch and misogyny put out a man can marry out of faith. A Muslim man can marry out of faith with a Muslim woman. The man is going to decide who takes and that's the religion, religion is generation of consciousness. Also getting two girls are getting married and the girls getting married into mom and dad. And that follows application in our saying yes you can. And here are all the reasons. The reasons based on the concept. But for many voters, they Muslim immigrant parents turn the denied guy off. Turn the denied guy to be off the walk with and grow with. The children of Americans boundaries and recognize that our children You are able and change the perception of your prayer. It is that instead of the prayer. If you understand the autism of the the same way, or my issue of them, one of them. This is one of the things I think and the same. How to see autism as autism and family as one. What is this mean? This is mixed from the no kind of therapy. They have name in the database and it's no match teaching. Along with it, 2 hours. There are only 8 or 4 being able to educate. I was president of the National Autism Association. I got one and got the word out in my autism network. Used the aim of autism to reach New York Times today. The Business Story Agency and the for another text from Sabeeha. He is hungry and he won't have any of being a company. And that is gone crazy. Let's have a fun. That he's only the former of mine, as ubiquitous a name among Muslims and as John Smith and David Cohen are among Christians and Jews. As and all my countrymen. With autism in him like a shepherd. Countrymen was in New York for the airport. Text from Sabeeha, dear please, terrorist is no match. My dear and big big one, autism moms adapt me up and the autism community making a big splash over it, but it's not now. As a young boy is starting my dad, what's going to happen the next time? And that is when my husband said to me, not enough that you have to not enough that we have to I work in our school, you see, and teach. Why you have to write a book and tell stories to raise awareness about them so that people can know because I wanted people to be able to know that the partner is not a monolith. We have the same I want to be able to say I don't want my grandchildren to be afraid to say get this book and get the dish for one of your friends. Don't take apple pie for them when you go with me. And they have this book. It has no calories, it is not perishable, long shelf life, and we can just a couple of months. About 15 months. Yes, I apologize for that. It just happened. Also, I will put in a podcast, podcast, so you can interview with a poet and in-depth interview with a poet. But then also interviews with leaders of me, and Bergen, uh, along with the individual who so as part of let me read from Keeping Room. This poem is called The Keeping Room. There comes a time when the phone is held down, shutters pulled tight. Within the keeping room, we worry, we wait. The light is reduced to the smallest version, the thrumming pain of the all but those of us still gathered, know but cannot bear to hope time. So this book, the title Keeping Room, is obviously comes from that poem, but also the idea of the collection is that it is an intimate space where painful things happen, illness and death, but also an intimate space where family and joy occur. And that space in the book extends to my garden. I'm a gardener and I write about the natural world as well. But there's a lot of illness in here, a lot of sorrow. And let's go into my garden now. It's a poem called Pencil. And this poem won a couple of years ago the Friends of the Writer Center Poetry Award. So Pencil. I stooped to loosen a thread of wild clover woven tight through my spotty lawn, and recall the morning I knelt on my small patch of yard and pulled, stretch after stretch of unwanted stem, made room for grass in barren spaces. My belly 8 months full, pulling it home in the Jersey August heat. I vowed to yank out every last bit, but I rarely in tendrils these days. I no longer need the box people and moratorium. Our future is short now, as I welcome the spread and crease of native flowers. The green threads one winding across the earth, remain a portal into the summer for motherhood. Before I learned that passion and love equals joy. Thank you. I go back sort of in time. And campus was always the most vibrant. The spring, unwieldy suits of yellow against the further landscape of green, popping bright of mud and groaning as students sleepwalked through flannel. I saw it all again through my 22-year-old eye. And the final campus season of exams, surgery, and chemo. Somber beginnings set against nature's. When I graduated from college, I was newly diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So, as my friends, my classmates were all preparing for a teacher and careers and job searches and graduate school and all that, I was a wonderful doctor and a lot of good luck. All worked out well. But it gave me a very different kind of my adulthood than my colleagues had. And I've lived through a lot of different illnesses in my life since cancer. I have MS. I also developed severe COVID in 2020, developed some long COVID. So we're going to 2020 now, called emergency visit in March 2020. I returned to pediatric emergency room for COVID triage area today. Details of monkeys, tails, loping elephants, spotted giraffes, raised walls. The doctor who took my vitals was tired, hadn't seen his kids in 2 weeks. The hospital prepared to admit me, then sent me home after 2 rounds of work. He needed bed. 3 days later, his birthday, bypassed the children's unit and was killed in the aide hesitated to help me onto the bed, offered a gloved hand only after I pleaded. And my new doctor was not step inside my person. He posted enough space through the gap in the fabric of the helmet. He wrote it and posted it. Back away like my age. Never. I have a series of poems in here that are sort of interwoven to nightmares called Nightmare with Hypoxia, another nightmare, another nightmare. Careless night, farm broiled, choked me out of bed. My old house shudders and lit. Sharp winds whistle through the walls, press the double front doors from their ancient hinges. Feel myself in the empty doorway, prick the wood framing, arms pressed taut against nature's force like a captain at sea. High above the leaf-patterned street, I watch the doors of my house locked out of the dust and gales at night. The front steps, the porch away, my battered house tears and steady, it holds strong. My body pulling, pushing, sail against nature's strength. And watch, raging darkness. It offers. And these were real neighbors I had. Because of the truly, and I was one effect of hypoxia is nightmares. And here's another nightmare. The viral barrage goes on. Storm waters rise high and higher. The city sinks away. My solitary house was tall, stretching floors above the flood. I climbed up, up to safety, hurry against the water, always in to wait out and pack off above the waterline. Um, there are some poems in here about local COVID because my acute COVID developed into long COVID, and also both of my daughters developed long COVID as well. It's been pretty crushing for my family. So there are pieces in here about that. I'm going to move on to poems I wrote standing and Emily Seven. Dogwood alone and small, precious branches under the towering oak. Simple red berries, delicate, sandals, and short stem. Small a big, tight, an intruder, the first shell. And yet, a tree stands tall in its own skin and its seed. Thanks for welcome. And care. Reading in part because my daughter told me and care. And Tony was 4 or maybe 5. That is usually a sanctuary and we have it. So raccoons on the street know to come in and be safe. But of course, the raccoons on the street and in the garden and on the side already knew as swimming at the side of the house, the porch, and past through an invisible scissor over the east, where they would find safety. Think to I am going to concentrate and while I was very, very ill with COVID, he had another form going on, which was being, in the New York City metro area. And right as low as his hands in his back, and feels his legs his way wide pants, knowing one remains here will power to unleash others held up and waiting. It used to be the unexpected that disrupted his balance. The new suit was too tight and too small for a teen struck down in the road. The calm words of a mother to her grown child laid out before her, speaking of tomorrow as the something that changed, or the collapse and despair of another who knew everything had. But in these endless days of horror, when the pandemic envelops and makes a home in our city, when the morgues are overflowing and the bodies are stacked and held 3 weeks for burial and the caskets are closed and families cannot kiss or send off their dear beloved, carrying the grief, those 2 days bodies of the each one clothing brought by loved ones, hands and palms their hair. Placing them in caskets, their families will never open. And the mountain waves sorrow high and higher until they crest, and the rushing waters wash and wash and wash over them. I have a piece coming out in Huffington Post, too, and I'm not sure if it's about post that's code and well, the story I think needs to be told because while we were applauding about medical providers as we should have been. Funeral directors were doing this work in private, and it was private and traumatizing, but also vital. And need a little bit of recognition. And more. Now I will end. I think I'm pretty much at time. So I'm going to end with one poem. It's the last poem in the section. Called Ending Toward Hope. And I practiced this by saying I had the honor of writing poems as part of a program called The Poet Is In, where people can come and have a poem written. And the first time I did it, this spring, I did it in a nursing home, and that was moving and hearing people's stories of for a couple minutes, and then I read a poem for them, and I couldn't read it for them and sent it out to them. And the first time I did it, I was in a hospital lobby, and very interesting to strangers' stories. And many of them were patients, many of them were hospital workers. The first one that I wrote, not one I wrote in the moment, but one I wrote after home. Something for a woman I've never met before, a stranger, but also soon a confidant, by telling me she has good before sharing her story, cancer and its return. Me, a established take time to remind herself. And so I know this thing that an ear bent towards consciously a little feeling and one has spoken all of on record. One sort of question, right? First, early on writing a novel and putting too much of myself. So I didn't recognize it at first. I was like, oh, and every time I did that. So, but I really, a lot of my novel is. So what I feel that I wish to do is that I have some politics elements of people I know and elements of my experience with kids going back in my home. But I make it a lot more. I can't be writing. I try to honor the people that I know, but they end up in little bits of my parents end up in like a couple lenses, and little bits of me end up in law. But this is the way it's going to give it when I feel like, oh, this is too much for me. I think it's a really good question. And about, I think for me, a lot of my writing, even when I'm writing about this stuff, I'm thinking of it as a kind of barren witness. So when I'm writing about COVID, I'm writing often my own story, but I write that because I think the story needs to be told. And I also should preface this by saying I'm a literary scholar also, and my focus in my life focus and on literature illness. So when first my older daughter only developed COVID in early March 2020, and I could not get tested for COVID, and then I got COVID right after, and then I became so ill, and I thought I gotta write about it. And I heard about Molly immediately. About 16-year-old in the spotlight. Um, but but I needed to tell the story, and I felt like I'd almost been training my whole life to do that because that's what I've done on the literature. And so I think it is doing witness, so whether I'm writing about myself or others, like Constantine's work or other aspects of the pandemic, in my memoir, and I'm bringing in other threads. It's one of the things that in the history, the cultural history as well. And she said, so when I was writing my prayer, I realized that what I felt then, not how I feel now. And I was writing about the incidents that we, for example, or nobody agreed. Each time I would look at the men, you know, what you know, like, not everybody was like that, but some were. It irritates me. When I started writing about it, and getting to it, like, how myself really understanding, where he was coming from, and also how it is, how it is connected with that. Then I wrote a story, and then I decided to convert and fix the idea. I had so much fun. I no longer had to worry. Am I being honest about it? Am I getting the whole truth? When somebody gets upset because I said something about them, I didn't have any of it. I had everything. I could say any character, any setting, any way, you know, and that picture. I think we have a question. Me about it. In 10 years, 10 years anniversary actually of our book. I'm wondering whether a book comment or the word in some way, and how is the book going up? Well, the book's doing very well. It's doing well, thankfully. How do you celebrate my 10th anniversary? What if I take you out for dinner, just you and me? Oh, and by the way, he is my husband also. That was that my memoir, but I guess I would say that I'll be really quick. I go with that in my memoir with an old friend, and I think that you have for memoir. Profession, you're free. You do what you want. Change the name. But in memoir, you have to be really ready to deal with the consequences. And so, like for my parents, I there's things they were great, but there were things I held back. But with friends, I had to kind of make And you sort of have to go with what the they say in creative nonfiction. Like, you remember things as your truth. You're not making anything up, but they might see it differently, and you have to be ready for that. So if you're not ready to have perhaps the consequences, you maybe need to transition or create something positive. And no one answer, no one for what the person is talking about. So because so I wrote a piece that was published, and I wrote it. It had to do with a secret that I was revealing, and so I changed the character. The story and my part of it was all real and all accurate, but I changed the character and I changed the relationship to me so that it won't be obvious who I was revealing. And this is just a literary journal. I don't think that person would ever see it, but I wouldn't have wanted that to be the case. It would have been hurtful. And I changed the details of the secret, not just so in a way that was parallel, right? So the details were different, but it was still like there was a kind of accurate there that was retained. You can't really do that if you're writing about, say, your spouse, your mother, right? You can't like change their name. Your mother in the story is your mother. So one piece of advice that I've tried to follow is sharing work with people before I publish it. I write, I tried, and I don't know if it's successful. I try to write without restraint, without worrying about the other person thinking, okay, I can deal with that later because right now it's on my laptop, no one's going to see it, right? I can change it and handle that, but let me get the truth out and then my truth, sorry. And then think about how I need to revise it or whether it never goes anywhere. I hard too raw for people I care deeply about, right? And they're not meant to be that, right? That's not my aim, is to hurt anyone. So, yeah, giving it is. I think that's right. But no right with anger or aggression, right? So I can take it. And the medical things, like I think I have to change my doctor's name and more. So I think it's good. And change the name. Yeah. Uh, that's a hard question to answer. When I wrote my memoir, I looked at my parents and my grandparents all the time before. And they will actually that anything that I have to say. And, and I wrote myself, invited, same thing. Um, now that we have that, and, uh, we want to do something that helps the novel.